Let's look at another exercise that's going to be helpful when you're doing your watercolor paintings. So staying with the cylinders, I'll go ahead and sketch out a simple cylinder. And from there, and we're not too concerned with color at this point, let's go ahead and take some of your black paint. If you have a palette, don't worry about cleaning it. It's actually kind of nice to pick up some of these random colors in your paint. And I'm going to add a bit of water to it so it dilutes the paint a little bit so that it's not so dark. So once I have that done, let's go ahead. I'm going to start with the body first. So I'll start with the body of the cylinder. And I'm basically using my sketchbook paper just because it's less expensive. And these are just exercises to help you get used to drawing with your brush. Now this exercise is going to be a little different than the one we did previously. And I'll talk about that in a minute. So let's finish up the body of this little cylinder right here. Okay, so I have something like this. Now let's go ahead and dry it out. Okay. And then from there, let's add a second layer to that body. Now, as we know, when we add our second layer, that the value of the body of this cylinder is going to go down, or it's going to get darker. Now the point of this exercise is to be able to make gradual value changes in your simple forms. So if I look at this this chart right here, notice how with each new layer you're going from lighter to darker, and then to darker again and darker again. So for the body of the cylinder, we've used two layers, so it's already sort of dark in the middle range. Now let's add paint to the top of that cylinder. And I should have been more careful because I've already kind of painted into the body. And I think I would rather have it more separated. Okay, so I added an initial layer. What I'm going to do now is with my brush, go ahead and clean it with water and then dry out the brush a little bit, and then use that brush as an eraser to remove some of that paint. Because when your brush is dry, it becomes an eraser, and what it does is it absorbs the paint, and what that does is it makes certain areas a little bit lighter. So let's go ahead and so now what I've created is a cylinder where the top, so here's the top of the cylinder, and then the side of the cylinder. So imagine if you had a light source coming from up top, it's going to get lighter at the top of the cylinder than it is at the side. So the side is going to be a little bit darker. So let's try that with a few other cylinders, but maybe this time let's make a lighter cylinder. So this cylinder is hovering around the middle value. So let's do another version. And then this version is going to be a little bit lighter. So I might begin. So another way to do this is to dilute your paint with a lot of water. And then let's cover the whole thing this time. So we're covering that entire cylinder. And I'm using a lot of water, so as you can see, this watercolor value is going to be on the lighter side. Alright, so something like this. Now let's go ahead and dry it out. And now after it's dry, we're going to add a second layer to the body. And also I'm going to be careful to not go too dark, so I make sure I have a lot more water in my brush. Whenever something is too dark, that means you have too little water and too much paint. So the way you go darker in watercolor, whether it's gradual or less gradual, is due to the amount of water you have. So in this case, there's a bit more water, and notice how I'm able to get a subtle kind of step darker. I might make this area maybe just a tad more darker. Okay. So just like the previous cylinder, we have a top plane and then we have a side plane that comes in. So the difference between this value here and this value here, it's about one step. So when I mean by one step is the difference between this value here coming to this value here. The step is very gradual, right? The difference between this value here to this value here. Although I think I probably could have done the steps a little better. They seem a little uneven on my value chart, but that's the idea. So we have a cylinder in our middle value, with this being a step lighter than here. And then we have a cylinder in our lighter value with this being a step lighter than over here.